went out, you can imagine how easy it would be to whip the world into a frenzy, because we've already had Independence Day, we've already had the film series V. We don't even need to know who's inside these craft. It would be so easy to hysterically claim that we're being attacked from outer space and this is real, and and these ETs aren't to be trusted, and we don't know what they're going to do next, and we've got to get our Star Wars. Right. I mean, it's so
the TV
easy.
show Event.
I haven't been watching it recently. I don't even know what's happened. Maybe you can clue me in on that. I started watching it and then turned it off because I thought it was so bad. But I know that, of course, it's part of the preparation.
It's bad on purpose, I think. They do just to melt my brain or something.
Just like Roland Emmerich's 2012 movie was bad,
it was horrible.
It still contains pointers.
Yeah, so, V was good.
That's my complex answer to Harley's question about what could such a false flag event be. And the reason why I lay that out in such detail is because I really want people to know how simple this would be. It would be so easy for them to do this. It would be so simple. And this might be one of the most dangerous things that we've got to face. It might be one of the most dangerous things that we've got to face, because if they do this kind of thing, then there's going to be an enormous engineered hysteria all over the world. And this is the danger, because another thing that I've been told is likely to happen is that there will be a push to criminalize or demonize the alternative media. I was told this before the Julian Assange thing came out with the WikiLeaks. I was told this before anyone knew what his name was. I was warned about this myself. I was told that this is what the FEMA camps are for. I had somebody telling me, he said, therefore people like you, and you're near the top of the list. That's what he said. It's a kind of interesting compliment. And if you imagine a sort of false flag event like I've just sketched out, and if you imagine people like myself and you and many of the people who's got a voice on blogs and radio programs all over the world suddenly saying, no, they're not bad guys, they're good guys. This is a government trick. Can you imagine how quickly we'd be silenced? Can you imagine what they might want to do to take us away so that we couldn't say this kind of stuff because we would be in league with these bad ETs in some way? It would be so easy to do that kind of stuff. And this is the danger. This might be, and I'm not trying to be negative or scaremongery, but it's just like as a heads up, this might be the thing that we need to really watch for over the next year or two, that this might be the challenge that we're going to have, is how to convince people that this is a trick if it happens. Because that might be one of the tipping points.
Well, Tom, I guess our names are on a list. I have another question.
We're in Canada, though. Nobody cares that much of you.
That's true. They leave us Canadians alone. We're out playing with the igloos.
It's funny. So, Bill, I've been in this field now for about close to 30 years, right? And I'm a kind of an old school guy. And back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of individuals down in the U.S. that were always claiming they were being followed by government, and they were, broken into their houses and so on and so forth, and implants disappearing, and, crash retrieval disappearing, and all kinds of stuff. I always used to ask them, how come none of this stuff happens here? We never had nobody chase us down or threaten us in any big way. Maybe Canadians don't care.
I did have a general call my home when I was looking into Ed Dames. General Stumblebein called my home and said,
Stumblebein is an American.
My boy.
That's interesting. Okay.
Do you have a question for Bill, Tom, or is that just a statement?
Yeah. I have one from Heretic, actually.
Yep.
Is there any new UFO? Oh, no. Is there any new info on... how am I going to repeat his name now? Gianluigi Zangari's view on the Gulf Loop current from the InSight, and if it has indeed affected the Gulf Stream.
Yes. What he's talking about there is and I'm not very good at pronouncing his name either. He's an Italian scientist who did some research, got very anxious that the loop current in the Gulf, which feeds the Gulf Stream, had somehow stalled. And the person who picked up that information was Dr. Bill Deagle, who's a very smart cookie and knows a lot about oceanography, as he knows a lot about a whole bunch of other things. And he publicized that. And then since then, I think it was the Earl of Stirling on an interview which he published, let me think, that was it with Alex Jones? I can't remember. But it was the Earl of Stirling, definitely, a week or two ago, said, okay, the Gulf Stream's failed. If you want any proof, you don't need to look at the oceanographic data. Just go and look and see what's happening to Britain at the moment. It's under several feet of snow, and this is highly unseasonal, not in November. That never happens. And this is true. There's something very weird happening there. Okay. My personal take on this is that there are variations in the loop current, there are variations in the Gulf Stream, and that putting my scientific hat on, I'm not a formal qualified scientist, but I think like a scientist, there's not enough data yet to know that something has gone irreparably wrong. This might be just one of the oscillations in the functioning of the Gulf Stream and the oscillations in the functioning of the loop current. For sure, I understand the mechanics that the huge oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico will have impacted on the loop current. You don't need to be Einstein to figure that out. But there are times in the past when it stopped and restarted, when there was no oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico to do that. These things happen. There's a kind of natural trend of what the mathematicians call chaos in all of these things. And to explain what chaos is, it's like if you look at a waterfall in a river or smoke coming out of a chimney or something, it's always changing and it's never the same. And it goes this way and it goes that way, and there are all these minor differences, but the overall pattern remains the same. And I think it's too early to say that we've got a major disaster on our hands because the Gulf Stream has shut down and the Atlantic conveyor has shut down. I think it's too early.
Right.
And ultimately, it's just a gut reaction. And I sort of tend to follow my instincts on some things. There's things I wake up in the morning and I look at them and they grab me. And then I know, or I feel that I know, that these are important things that I've got to pay attention to because they're going somewhere and that something's telling me something. And many of your listeners will know exactly what I mean by that. You may have that same experience. With this thing about the loop current in the Gulf Stream, it's not grabbing me. And so it's a subjective answer in the end. It's just not grabbing me. I think that this isn't a disaster. I think it's an unusual perturbation.
Okay, well, let's try another question from Fifi. Can you share a bit about the much darker secret that your insider talked about? Now, that's all I have, so no details.
Yeah. Okay. I can't share a lot at the moment, but I'm willing to do a little bit of seed sowing here. I'm not being deliberately enigmatic. And I can say something about this. I've been contacted by somebody who is very well connected on the inside, who revealed a large amount of information to me. And this contact began in August. And this has occupied a great deal of my time and energy since then. And a number of people have become a little bit close to this story because there are all kinds of interesting interesting dramas that occurred which involved some of the individuals who are actually listening here. This all sounds a bit enigmatic. This whole story will be told in the end because it's quite an extraordinary human story. I mean, it's just interesting, besides some parts of it being important. Now, those of you who know me quite well or have been following my work over the last few years know that I'm quite cautious and I'm quite scientific in my view. And this means that I'm not actually going to jump to publishing something just because somebody has sent me a story in an email or phoned me up saying, look, I got this stuff and you've got to get it out there right now and never mind who I am. I tend to check things out quite carefully. I've learned a lot over the last 4 or 5 years. I've developed my own criteria for what I should publish immediately and what I should sit on. And I'm sitting on this because I want to check it out. There's information which I don't understand yet. There's information which I haven't yet had the opportunity to clarify and ask questions about. And so this is the context for all of this. Potentially there's something of great importance, but I don't know my facts well enough yet to be able to release it. Okay, and that's why I haven't done anything.
Are there? I'm going to add to this. Are there multiple sources for this information, or is that your problem? You're having one source, and you need to connect more dots.
One source. It's the problem with all intelligence information. And I mean, I'm not comparing myself to intelligence agencies, but there's a process involved here. That if somebody comes to you with a story, then if you can corroborate it and check it out and then get more data and then get proof and then get documents and then get somebody saying something on record because you've got them in the same room, then you've really got something to act on. But if all you've got is it's just one person who's saying something and you haven't actually met them and they're just sending you information, then you need to be very, 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 very careful indeed. Right. And I am being very, very careful. Having said that, a lot of it fits, a lot of it is shocking, a lot of it is fascinating, a lot of it answers questions that I've had for a very long time. And some of this is starting to play out during the time that I've been in contact with this person. I mentioned that just a few minutes ago. He said to me back in September, he said, the first thing that they're going to try and do is to criminalize and demonize the alternative media. That was before the WikiLeaks thing broke, And the last conversation I had with this guy, he said, look at what's happening. He said, I told you so. Now, that doesn't mean that Julian Assange is a plant. I don't believe he is at all. I think he's just like many of us. He's just doing what he can do to get the truth out, doing it in his own way, in his own style, and so on and so forth. But the point is that they're jumping on this opportunity, and this is the great danger we've got. There's a huge danger here that this has handed them an opportunity to start policing the internet just like they're policing the airports, and they may police anything else that they want to police if they start thinking that there are terrorists out there among us who are trying to damage public interests, national security, attacks against, MasterCard and Visa and PayPal and Amazon and people like that. If all of this sort of, I mean, even now, I've heard people out there who aren't very well informed who thinks that it's WikiLeaks who's doing the hacking. I mean, and all of this, just like after 9/11, people thought it was Saddam Hussein who'd attacked New York. These misperceptions are being allowed to stick in order to get the public behind the idea that just as we've got to defend ourselves against the nasty terrorists, now we've got to get ourselves defended against the nasty